Oh, my God. We should be talking about tariffs. Instead, we're talking about Sam Nunberg, but we're going to get to tariffs, I promise. Joining me now, Liz Peek. You know Liz, she writes for FoxNews.com, and she was at CPAC, and she's becoming a star. Well, she's always been a star, but ever since she's been on my show, she's even a bigger star. Liz, sorry I had to wake you up today. Good morning.
Good morning. That's okay. I'm always glad to hear from you at 5:15 in the morning. Who wouldn't be?
Oh, well, I know a lot of people that wouldn't be. But did you like the emoji that I texted you?
Yeah, I do. What time do you get up, John?
3:30.
Oh, Zowie, that's a pretty early start.
Yeah.
Anyway, I totally agree with you about this guy Nunberg. I think it's just horrific that they have given him so much airtime, but very easy choice, right? Somebody who's going to spew all kinds of really negative stuff about Trump and Trump acolytes and Trump White House, even though he clearly doesn't have any inside scoop on what's going on there now, and even though he has been disgraced, it's just kind of sad. I mean, it is literally sad. And I don't know when this hatred for Donald Trump is ever going to wane. It may not ever happen. I don't know. I'm beginning to think that these fires are, they're going to burn eternally. But I hope not, because it's really damaging our country.
I agree with that. That's a sober assessment. I mean, this guy had no influence on anything. He was fired after 7 weeks of the campaign. 7 weeks, and Lewandowski fired him. And then he went to work for Cruz. He supported Cruz. So he wasn't even a Trump supporter. I mean, he was working for Ted Cruz because he was so upset that he got fired. And so he just wanted to get back at everybody.
Yeah, he's
so he
a
had
mercenary.
no influence.
I mean, look, Anthony Scaramucci is kind of in the same boat, right? Every time there's an opportunity, he kind of lashes out at John Kelly and talks about how unstable the White House is and so forth. These guys who have cycled through this White House and been fired really, or have it in for the president, whatever they can do to kind of create this vision of chaos in the White House and bring unfavorable things to light, they're going to do it. And I really think it's too bad. I mean, I have to say, obviously some of it is the fault of the president. He surrounded himself in those early days with untested people. But, I wish people, how the left is really big on empathy, and when, Obama wanted a Supreme Court justice with empathy, and so he picked Sotomayor against, other people with perhaps better judgment, better legal training, and so forth. The truth is there's no empathy for this guy. He came to office with no coterie of long-time government officials or people who had really worked in the government. No one wanted to be part of his campaign, or at least very few did. So he hired kind of a motley crew, and, there's been a lot of turnover, partly because some of those people really weren't fit for office. But it really isn't Trump's fault. It's really the sort of circumstances that he found himself in. All those Republican primary challengers had their own staffs. They had a lot of the people that might have been more seasoned veterans of working in D.C., and he ended up with people like Lewandowski and like this guy you're talking about, and many others who, along the way, fell overboard because they just really weren't fit. Mm. But it was it's been a pretty difficult thing to sort of assemble a working group in the White House that's stable and people complain so much about Ivanka and Jared Kushner. Look, they are trusted by the president. That is a huge win for them. They're competent. They have the best interests of the country and this White House in their hearts. Mm-hmm. I wish people would just stop banging away at absolutely everything they say or do. It seems to me he's lucky to have him, and we're lucky to have him.
Well, I agree with that. I definitely think the country and the White House and the president is much better served having Ivanka and Jared there. I'm big fans of them, and the business dealings that Jared has, as far as I'm concerned, they don't have anything to do with anything. I mean, the guy ran a business.
That's right.
And this is the other thing. I mean, we're not accustomed to people running in the government that ran businesses, right?
That's
we're
right.
accustomed to lifelong politicians like Bill Clinton, who never had a job. I mean, George W. Bush really never had a job. I mean, he's silver spoon, right? He never had a job. His father never had a legitimate job. I mean, these people were just, agents of the government. Obama, what was his job?
And We're used to
community
Obama's
organizer.
White House where there wasn't a single person, not a single person in his first White House that had any private sector experience whatsoever. He didn't believe in it. He didn't trust it. And, so, again, now they're banging away on Jared Kushner for having had some meetings about his business the first few months in the White House. Well, what did they expect? That, day one, on November 5th, he was going to basically throw his business overboard? No, there were things that had to be finished and tied up, and I'm quite positive that those things have now been put on the back burner, and he is pretty fully engaged with the business of the country. But I think it's the endless sort of lack of any kind of consideration that these people get that is just so offensive to me. I hate unfairness, John, and it's unfair.
Well, Liz, you hit the nail on the head. The hatred for this president is unbelievable. I was thinking the only thing that I kind of could go by, I was trying to think back, like, what could I compare this to? And it was kind of, remember the early days? I don't want to tip your age, okay, so don't get offended.
No, I don't remember.
Okay, I know.
Whatever it was.
I remember the early days of the Carter administration, right? They had Jody Powell, Ham Jordan. They called it the Georgia Mafia. They brought in as Secretary of Treasury Burt Lance, like some tiny little bank in North Georgia that loaned the Carter campaign an obscene amount of money. And they had those kind of scandals going on at the beginning. And they were fighting each other about, who got to play tennis, and it was kind of chaotic. But then, to Carter's credit, he then brought in Democratic Washington operatives, right? Powell was gone, Ham Jordan, all these people were gone, and he started bringing in veterans. But the Democrats are different. They actually believe in something, and they didn't trash the guy. He ended up getting beat bad, but they never trashed him. They never got fired by Carter and then went on NBC or Cronkite and trashed the guy.
Again, but these are mercenaries, right? These were guys who were hired not because they believed the Trump vision. Steve Bannon believed the Trump vision, but most of these guys, they were just agents for hire. And by the way, Carter isn't the only person who had a disruptive and disrupted White House. Bill Clinton did too, if you remember, and had to bring in a chief of staff about a year and a half in that basically calmed things down, much as John Kelly has done. But the constant uproar about everything John Kelly does is because the establishment, the media, does not want this to work. They don't want John Kelly to be able to preside over a White House that is functioning. The more dysfunctional it is, the better it is for Democrats and the better it is for everyone who's hoping to displace Trump in 2020. That is the bottom line. And so you just have to take all these stories that you read with a giant grain of salt, and most of them should be taken in that vein because they only quote unnamed sources. They're full of gossip and innuendo. I was going back, and honestly, I can't remember the topic right now, looking at pieces over the last 2 years on a particular issue, and they contradicted. I was looking at the Washington Post, and it was contradicted itself. It would put out a sort of, wow, here's a new piece of gossip and innuendo, and then a day later it'd be completely reversed and contradicted by the next piece of gossip. And really there's never any accountability on the part of the media to say, gee, we got that wrong, we're sorry, we defamed someone's character and reputation, and now we see that that was a mistake. There's never any of that. They just go on with the next slander. It's really, I got to tell you, it's really pretty bad. And I don't like Trump constantly trashing the media, but I think they deserve it. I would have to say.
And this is the thing. There's so many leakers in that White House. Liz, I had communication with Ivanka yesterday, and there was an article in the newspaper called The Hill, and it bashed her and her husband. The quote was, a Republican political operative. So the line went on. Somebody said, General Kelly effectively neutered Jared and Ivanka, rendering them useless. And it was quoted by a Republican political operative. If I was an editor for a long time, if I got that across my desk back in the day, I would have not printed it B, and the second I would have had the writer in my office and said, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
What do you mean a Republican political operative? That could be somebody in Hawaii. What is that? That's no information.
But that's what I'm saying. And there's never any follow-up. A month from now, when they're still in the White House and still behind policy moves and so forth, and very instrumental to helping President Trump carry forth his agenda, you're never going to have the Hill or whoever that writer is say, "Oh gosh, I guess I got this wrong." They don't care. I mean, they don't care. There's absolutely no adherence to the truth at all.
Nope, they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care. Anyway,
their objective is to trash this president because I guess that gets clicks or advertising revenue or something. But it's just disgusting what they're doing and shameful. And even that quotation, a Republican operative. Now, it would be one thing if they said a senior official in the White House. If I called that person in, and, this is kind of the way my business worked back in the day, is you'd call the person in and you'd be like, you shut the door and you'd be like, all right, who is this? They'd have to give you the name.
Yeah.
And then you'd be, okay, well, be sure you put that in your file and you put it in our under lock and key journalist file department. But I, as the editor, I have to know who this person is because this is a pretty damning statement. And then I would actually physically ask for the notes if I was suspect. I would ask. You would have to show me your handwritten notes. Obviously, if it's on tape and you got permission, that's easier. But back in the day, you'd have to show me that, and I'd have to read it. And then I'd put that in the file. I'd copy it and put it in the file. I mean, today it's just you can call up anybody anywhere as a political I could be a political operative, Republican political operative,
and just sort of splash whatever bile you have in the morning across the front page. I mean, it is terrible. Anyway, let's talk about tariffs.
Go ahead.
Well, my view on the tariff thing, and I was thinking this morning when I woke up, this is one of President Trump's problems. His MO is that he starts out with a very big position, whether it's immigration or trade or whatever, expecting it to be whittled down in the back and forth of negotiation. But absolutely without fail, the entire media and the entire political world goes berserk over his initial position. My view of the tariff thing, the minute I saw it, was, okay, look, we're in the middle. We're talking about tariffs that he imposed on aluminum and steel, and that drove everyone to the brink of hysteria. We're in the middle of renegotiating NAFTA, our South Korean trade agreement, and also talking to China. The day he announced it, their top Chinese finance guy was in Washington meeting with Mnuchin, Gary Cohn, and everybody about trade and about their trade surplus with the United States. So Trump lofts this notion of pretty onerous tariffs, and everyone goes completely nuts. Well, and the market tanks and all the rest. So what did we see happen yesterday? Exactly what I could have predicted. That is like, well, we're talking to NAFTA, we'll kind of see, how those talks go. We're in round 7 of renegotiating NAFTA. There has been progress. People think NAFTA probably will survive, but there are 2 or 3 issues that are real sticking points. And last week, Peña Nieto and Trump had a conversation that ended in an argument over the wall and who's going to pay for it, and there are other arguments taking place. So what better way to sort of push the NAFTA negotiators other than imposing these sanctions, which, by the way, very much hurt Canada and Mexico. So it seemed to me a direct shot across the bow. Whether or not there will be flexibility on imposing these sanctions or not, I don't know. But I think we're a very interesting period here because for the first time ever, normal people, the liberal media, let's say, are looking at China and coming to understand that China is China first and China only, and that they are not to be trusted, that they have misbehaved. There's a very interesting thing out, The Economist, which I read, just came out yesterday, front page about how the West got China wrong. And I was offended, frankly, by that because I felt like saying, okay, I didn't get China wrong, you got China wrong. And in fact, they say that in the magazine. Yes, China has not, ever since the WTO, we all thought they were going to play by the rules. They have not played by the rules. Trump, they don't say this, but the truth is Trump is completely right on his reading of China. So again, China's in town. What better way to signal to China that we really mean business? It is amazing to me that nobody out there kind of figured out what was going on here until, Trump began to make some comments that could be read as modifying his position. Then the market's up almost 400 points. They will never learn, John. We've had a year and a half of this, and guess what? No one's really on the learning curve.
Well, because they don't want to be, because all they want to do is trash
right.
him. I mean, they kind of know what he's doing. He's a big thinker, and that's what you want in the White House. You want a big thinker. You want big ball. I used to complain about the Republicans playing small ball all the time. I complained bitterly about it. I want big ball. I mean, the guy's got two guys on and nobody out. He's not trying to move them over. He's looking for something that he can hit a 3-run homer on. I mean, I think that's how you play. Anyway, I got to go. We're out of time. I want to thank Liz Peek for getting up early, being on with us. Thanks, Liz. Always an honor to have you on. Follow her on Twitter, @Liz Peek, @Liz Peek.